Okay, I'm going to try and show you the assembly of the nose wheel. I'll do this in several parts. Some of it I might just do in fast forward. I've cleaned up most of the parts here, so a lot of bits have got string on it which you're going to just get rid of, but anyway, it's all fairly obvious. Okay, start TPU wheel. Hopefully you can print better than I can. I'm going to try a different material or a different brand of TPU, the foaming stuff that 3D load print sell. But anyway, this is just regular TPU, and in here we have the two halves, so you can glue those together if you want it a little bit more solid. I think I probably will. Make sure you don't have too much slop. We're just using an M3 countersunk bolt there, and that is, assuming this will work, this one is a 25mm. I probably need a slightly longer one, but anyway, for the purposes of this we'll use the 25. I think slightly longer just to give it a little bit of protrusion out the other side, and preferably with a nut on the other side, but it's also got to fit in the well, it'll fit here quite easily, I think, in the fuselage. But anyway, there's one side you can see there's a countersunk hole in it. Okay, and this side's got a, well, it's got an M3 thread sort of moulded into it, but I wouldn't give that too much credit for holding it there. But anyway, it'll do up. You don't want slop in the wheel if you can avoid it, so don't, with those little hubs you've got to drill out the center so it's a reasonable fit. Okay, so it goes into the countersunk. Now if it's slightly longer it'll protrude, and you can put on a nut on the other side, and that's what I would recommend. So you don't want, when this hits, to break there and splay out. That might be enough, that thread in there, sort of, I guess, your judgment. It's probably how I'm going to run it the first time, like that, but anyway, we'll see. Okay, so that's the fork for the nose wheel. You'll see there's a little mark and a groove in there where I have an 8mm spring. This is actually from the original as supplied spring with my Ender 3 V2. It's a 19mm or 20mm long, uncompressed. Anyway, it's got a reasonable amount of spring. You might want to adjust it to whatever suits you. And here we've got the main leg, so that will fit. You got to clean that up a little bit into here, so that sits in that hole. It's not a lot of spring in this, but it probably doesn't need a lot that way around. And you'll see there's a little countersunk mark in there. So what we will need to do is get that into there, and it's tapped on the other side. Once again, I would also recommend a nut on the other side. So tighten that up. Okay, so you can see there's a fair bit protruding out there. So you can use, probably with a washer, but oops. I would probably put a bit of Loctite on this to stop it from coming undone. The washer will help a little bit, but anyway, you get the idea. It's not a huge amount of movement. What you don't want is this to be able to twist and tear that apart. So the nut and the countersunk will try and hold it together to give it that little bit of extra strength. But hopefully it shouldn't be landing sideways anyway. So there you go. That's together, or the nylock, which is probably the better one to use here anyway. Okay, so now you've got that. Here is your standard retractable landing gear. You can see the pin moves around in there. It's a standard retractable nose gear, steerable, so you can see that it turns around. Now I've taken the standard arm off that. It just has a little screw. You can see there's two flats there on either side. And in here, once you cleaned it up, there's actually got two flats as well, so you can see that it should line up. And I've put a little angle on the second hole there so you can get that in there a fair distance, so that when that clips in, you can get it in reasonably tight so it lines up with those flats, so it can't move around too much. That'll hold it. And then we have this side. Now I've already put the wires in here. They're badly done, but anyway, you can do a better job, but they work. So that will go on there. Now I should have done this before. I will undo it. Okay, that's the wire we're going to use for the steering arm. You want to tie a little loop knot in there just so that it doesn't pull through that hole. So yeah, if you've done pull control systems, you probably know better than I do. You could use crimps and things like that, but anyway, this, yep, it's coming apart a bit. So I'll just trim it off. So that will go through here, and it won't want to pull all the way through. That's control line wire or braided wire, whatever you've got. You might want to try a fishing line trace or whatever it is that you're using. This is what I had sitting around from a spool of control line wire from when I was a teenager. It's a while ago. Okay. So now we're going to clamp that on there so that that will not come off, and so the pin doesn't drop down and jam the mechanism through the trunnion. So you can see that lines up. There's a bit of a thread in there, or if it's just slightly smaller. So what we'll need is an M3, and this one is, when you go a flat headed, it is an 8mm M3 button head with a hex screw. If it's any longer, it's going to hit there. So you want it to be 8mm down the thread and no longer. Okay, so we need two of those. Oh, they have to be steel because they have to be magnetic. So I'll just tighten that in. It doesn't have to be on the pin to do this, but anyway. To get it started anyway. So now I'll do that up, and it tightens into the other half. And it's got to be done up so it's firm, because you don't want it coming off, you don't want it sliding around on that pin. So they're done up fairly tight. That can move around, and the clearance is minimal, which is exactly what you want. So now we put that on there. Okay, so that's the gear holding block. So I'm not going to attach that just yet, but you can see the holes line up for a countersunk M3 thread. But we need that also when it's all together to slide into there, but you'll see there's two holes at the back. Yep. And if you look in here, you may not be able to see it on the camera, but there's a bigger hole and then a smaller hole. The small hole's a 3mm, and it will take a 3mm screw obviously, but also toothpick. This is for alignment, so we actually want to put a brass insert in there. Okay, we need to attach that to there, at least get the holes set up. So we'll just, originally I had the brass inserts on the other side, but I sort of decided now that we've gone to PLA or PLA plus, it's probably not necessary to put the brass inserts there. This will screw quite handily into the PLA plus, but we need to just make sure we've threaded them all in there first. There's always a risk with the brass inserts you're going to cross thread it, and it can be, well, difficult to replace. Yeah, I can't see this coming out in a hurry, so I'm just tapping a thread into each one of these. So I'll probably speed this up once I've got it in there. That's one. And there's two other screws that need to go in there. So they don't, yeah, they go into a threaded hole there, but once again you're tapping into the PLA plus again. Here I have that type of screwdriver. And this is to hold the servo tray on the end for the steering. All I need to do is engage. Well, that one and then that side. So it needs to be, well, this side needs to be that long to get engaged in the block, but the other side could be shorter. But this is a 10mm bolt. So now we'll do that attachment. we go. Okay, now that that's attached, we can look at this bit, which is the servo holder for the steering. Oops, that way around. So get the cable, put it down there through that groove, just stick out a little bit. Sort of got to get it through that hole first because it won't fit. The plug's usually too big. Anyway. Line up this hole. There we have those. So, push that a bit out of the way. And there's a hole there for the wire, so hopefully you've got the same servo. Just fits in that little pocket there and sits flat. And an M3. This could be really short. I don't have any short M3s left with a flat. You might find something else you want to put in there. I found you actually only really need one screw here, just to stop it from popping out. Because when it pull, it'll tend to pull the servo in. So you don't really... Now this is just holding it down more than anything. Doesn't have to be super tight or anything. Okay, that servo's going nowhere. It's all locked in. Everything in this can be pulled apart if need be. Okay, I'll just show you this amazing wheel straightening mechanism. So I've got this part, this tab, and you can see it's got two little holes, looks like eyes, and two big holes. And the only thing we've got to play with is that in keeping it straight when it retracts, otherwise it can swivel anywhere it wants. So we have 8mm diameter magnets. They're neodymiums, so they're quite strong. And they're the ones we're using on the hatches and everything else, because I got a job lot of them. So 3mm thick. I need more now actually, because I've used them all up. So we've got two steel nuts there that will always straighten up. It's as good as a spring. Probably better. Simple. Doesn't tend to want to fly off. Although I dare say if you hit the ground hard enough, who knows. What I'll probably do is put a little hole in it, a little lug, so you can put a bit of string just in case it wants to fly off. But anyway, as you can see, it can handle a fair bit of turning. It shouldn't be like that anyway, because the servo can't turn it that far. So we've got these two holes here now. And we've got our servo arms. So I've used those little servo control rod holders. You might have a different way. I don't know. I found the proper pull system has, with the clevises, has an arm that's too long. It basically bridges the gap. So it doesn't really work out very well to use exactly the bits supplied with a pull system. Anyway, so I'll pull the screw out here on the servo. You may want to replace this with an aluminium one, an aftermarket one, just for whatever bit of strength. I personally think if it can break that, well, you'd hit the ground too hard anyway. I'd rather have a little bit of give in it. So we got that there. Now just get the screwdriver. Okay, and now, as I said before, I've got these little knots I've put in here so that they can't go. Probably better off with a fresh bit of wire. I've done these ones before, but anyway, just got to thread that through the hole. If it gets a bit frayed, it gets a little harder. There we go. So maybe something tied on there, like a bit of dowel or something might be a better way. So that's at that end. And here we simply push that through. Easier said than done. Make sure the little grub screw inside it's open. I'll just open up a little bit more. I know I undid it to pull it out, but could do a little bit more room. There we go. Out the other side. Doesn't have to be massively tight, but just enough to put some tension on the wire. You get the idea. You'll probably have to find your own preferences with this. So, and the other side as well. Oh, I need to center it. Okay, so I'll put that on. There is the unit. That is the basic nose gear unit, which can be duplicated, replaced, put in a different design even. I will put that in first just to show you. So we've got our screws down there. But this can go in and out even after the battery section has been glued on. So you get that forward. Trying not to get a bit of wire in my hand. So, there. Now, this is where we use these screws. That's why I shouldn't have used two there, because I've only got one left now. Okay. Maybe if you got one of those really long. Oh, did well without the centralizer. But now I can get to that screw a little bit better. There we go. And if I had another bolt, I'd put it on the other side too, but I don't. So let's put that on.
Gear down.
Plug in the other. Goes into slot 1. There we go. I think that's adequate deflection. I suppose I could put it further out on the arm if I wanted more. And
Gear up.
let's see the other way around.
Gear down.
Yeah, with the wires there, it doesn't want to move even without that. Yeah. Okay. Had the wrong screws in there, so they were slightly shorter. These are the right ones. They are 10 mils. Okay, a little bit of clarification here. So this is the steering arm, well, the steering retract. Okay, so that has a hole that goes all the way through in this leg here, and has a slight angled part, so you can slip that thing in at an angle and push it down, so that those flat bits, there's little flats in there, you barely see them once you cleared it out, but they're there, and I'm going to stop the pin from dropping down into the trunnion. Might be easier to do with in a retract position. No, it doesn't really matter. Okay, if you get it right, there you go, it's in place. If you're having trouble with that pin down there, you can just put something down there to hold the pin in place. Just be careful. So, but anyway, that goes on there. And make sure you get this the right way up. Yeah, this sits on there. Through the wheel. Probably easier without the wires on it. Anyway. Yeah. here's the bit I went wrong with before. This is a 10mm thread, M3, the button head. This one happens to be a Phillips head, so that's what we'll use. And that'll give you the right length to go all the way through the block, but no further, because you don't want it fouling on here when you get there. Oops, probably not showing that, am I? Yeah, so the 10mm goes all the way through to here. Perfect fit. And here is the alternative. It's identical in most respects to the steerable nose wheel, but this is the non-steering retractable gear if you don't want that complication of the extra servo. Personally don't need steering at my field, but I appreciate that some people do. But anyway, if you're happy to have it going straight ahead, it's a slightly, the pin doesn't go all the way through and it's slightly different length. You can make the other one fit this, but this one's probably slightly easier because of the length to get, and the flats are almost in the same spot, but not quite. So anyway, do this and do that up with the 10mm bolts as well. And it's, yeah, it just won't steer. But just everything else is exactly the same. Okay, I'll just quickly clean this up. I won't show it all on camera, too boring. But yeah, anyway. Basically, we've just got to trim this back a bit so it looks roughly like that one. So that that slides in the full distance. And then I'll show you the next bit. Okay, well I put the brass insert in there before, and getting the soldering iron in there and the pegs and everything, and it was very close to burning my hand and everything. It's too fiddly. It works, but it's fiddly. But what it needs to do is just hold this thing in place. So what I've done is I've just put in a simple smaller hole that's should be ready for a M3. I've slightly flared the top. It might help just to clean it up a little bit, but it's deep enough. So before putting that in, I'm just going to try it out to get the thread going, just to show that this thing will screw into that little hole. I've reinforced down the sides of it, so it should have something to key into. I know this is lightweight PLA, but anyway. I really do need to get some of those hex head screwdrivers rather than this. Okay, now I've got it. Okay, so we know that side works. So it's a 12mm bolt. Okay, so now you'll put your retract in there. Matter of fact, I'll just use the non-steering one as an example. No, I won't. I have to put a bolt in there. Anyway, doesn't matter. So that slides in here so that those holes line up down there with a great deal of dexterity. Obviously don't over tighten this thing, you'll just end up stripping it out. You might want to put a bit of thin CA in the hole as well. Alright, so that'll go on there. Getting down to that will be just, you got the same clearance, should be all good.
Disarmed.